NBC5, the Dallas Morning News, and SMU.
On citizenship for dreamers today, and yet others who have applied to come to America continue to wait.
We're in Booker, Texas. We've traveled to each one of the 254 counties. One of the write our immigration laws in our own image. And we will gain hundreds of billions to the positive if we keep them here.
Well, good evening and welcome. Many times in just 4 words. Legal, good, illegal, bad. Legal immigrants. There is a right way to come to this country. Millions of Americans, Americans are dreamers also. And granting U.S. citizenship to 12 million people who are here illegally, I think is a serious mistake. I think Congressman O'Rourke is out of step with Texas on that.
This month in Dallas, Officer Amber Geiger shot Botham Jean, a black.
But he immediately called for firing the officer. So in the United States Congress, he voted against allowing funds to go to body armor for sheriffs. When it comes to immigration and customs enforcement, he has said he's open to abolishing that law enforcement agency.
In Fort Worth, my Uncle Raymond was a sheriff's deputy, unarmed black man killed in this country by law enforcement. Now, no member of law enforcement wants that to happen. No member of this community wants that to happen, but we've got to do something better than what we've been doing so far.
Do you agree that police violence against unarmed African Americans is a problem? And if so, how would you fix it?
I've been to too many police funerals. I was here in Dallas when 5 police officers were gunned down because of irresponsible and hateful rhetoric. And turning people against the police,
Senator,
I
please,
think is profoundly irresponsible.
This is why people don't like Washington, D.C. You just said something that I did not say. And
what did you not say?
Attributed it to me.
What did you?
Polls show that most Americans don't think that NFL players should be kneeling during
the civil rights marchers who took their lives into their hands crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge in this country. 2 sets of criminal justice systems depending on your race, your ethnicity, and your color. That prison protests that injustice nonviolently, and to call attention to that, to prick the conscience of this country so that
Cruz.
Congressman O'Rourke gave a long soliloquy on the civil rights movement. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons that I'm a Republican is because civil rights legislation was passed with the overwhelming support of Republicans, and indeed, the Dixiecrats who were imposing Jim Crow, the Dixiecrats who were beating those protesters were Democrats. Protect our liberty. And to be clear, everyone has a right to protest. You have a right to speak. But you could speak in a way that doesn't disrespect, not something Dr. King stood for. He stood
Senator
for justice without disrespecting the men and women who fight for this country.
First of all, he again tried to mislead you by taking a peaceful protest during the national anthem to burning a flag. No one.
Judge Brett Kavanaugh.
And I hope that she comes and has a full opportunity to tell her story in a way that is respectful, but I also think Judge Kavanaugh deserves a full opportunity to defend himself. Congressman O'Rourke agrees with Hillary Clinton. He wants liberal judicial activists on the court who will impose their particular policy view. And I believe Texans want constitutionalists on the Supreme Court.
Dr. Ford's allegations should be investigated by the FBI. Full voter turnout. Judge Kavanaugh has a troubling history on voter rights protections. In a state that is the epicenter for the maternal mortality crisis, 3 times as deadly for African American women, Judge Kavanaugh has a troubling history in agreeing that Roe versus Wade is the decided law of the land.
It's not a judge's job to impose policy, and he also didn't dispute that he wants justices that would undermine the Second Amendment. Let me talk for a moment about the case Heller versus District of Columbia. It's a land.
And we are moving on here.
Hold on. He disputed that. You can have a rebuttal.
Of course I support the Second Amendment.
Gentlemen, let's move on here. This question goes to Representative O'Rourke. Representative, you believe in universal background checks and an assault weapons ban in a
But a weapon designed for the express purpose of killing people as effectively, as efficiently, and as great a number as possible. The high-impact, high-velocity round from an AR-15 will blow a hole the size of an orange.
Afternoon, Governor Abbott and I were in a hospital visiting with a young man who was shot. There were probably a dozen other students in that room. And we said, what's the answer to this? And we just kept our mouth shut and listened. Every one of those dozen Santa Fe students who had just been in that shooting, they said, almost word for word, they said, gun control's not the answer. They said, you know what, if you take our guns, you're not going to make us any safer. You're just going to mean that the killers and murderers have guns. We asked, well, what do you do then? The number one answer I heard from the students and parents and teachers at Santa Fe is more armed police officers in schools to keep our kids safe.
her daughter's life. It will not make us safer. Thoughts and prayers, Senator Cruz, are just not going to cut it anymore. The people of Texas, the children of Texas deserve action.
Well, hold on a second, and let me be very clear. More armed police officers in our schools is not thoughts and prayers. I'm sorry that you don't like thoughts and prayers. I will pray for anyone in harm's way, but I'll also do...
Then New York businessman Donald Trump. Donald Trump, as you remember, dubbed you Lion Ted.
There is no doubt 2016 was an election unlike any others. On the face of the planet, I am blessed from God to be married to Heidi Cruz. I made a conscious choice to do the job I've been elected to do, which is to represent 28 million Texans. Yes, I could have chosen to make it about myself, to be selfish and say, you know what, my feelings are hurt, so I'm going to take my marbles and go home. But
of the 254 counties of Texas, wonder where their junior senator is, as this president enters trade wars and imposes tariffs that are going to hurt no state more than Texas. A senator who will stand up to this president where we must, work with him where we can, but ensure that 242 years into this audacious experiment, that we are still a nation of laws and not one of men.
Support of farmers and ranchers across the state. Indeed, the Texas Farm Bureau has endorsed my reelection because I've been fighting for farmers and ranchers for 6 straight years. And the modern Democratic Party is just consumed with hatred for Donald Trump. That's why Congressman O'Rourke is the only Democratic Senate nominee in the country to explicitly commit to voting to impeach President Trump. That is
your 1998 DWI arrest numerous times during your public career, but not this question. As the Houston Chronicle pointed out recently, a witness said in that accident that you tried to leave the scene of the accident. Did you, and should voters be concerned about this incident?
Yeah. Though driving drunk, which I did, is a terrible mistake for which there is no excuse or justification or defense, and I will not try to provide one. I can only tell you that I was able to have a second chance in my life. I was able to start a small business with good friends in El Paso, was able to meet Amy on a blind date before Tinder, raised 3 amazing kids with her, Ulysses, Molly, and Henry, served my community on the El Paso City Council, and made the most that I could with my second chance and my opportunity. What I do know is that as a white man in this country, there's a privilege that I enjoy that many African American men and women do not. Their full potential, and no one's mistake defines them for the rest of their lives.
You know, I don't intend to get into Congressman O'Rourke's personal history. I think that's a real mistake, and it's part of a pattern. There's a consistent pattern when it comes to drug use that in almost every single instance, Congressman O'Rourke supports more of it. So when he was on the El Paso City Council, he's one of the leading advocates in the country for legalizing marijuana. He wrote a book about that. Now, legalizing marijuana is actually a question on which I think reasonable minds can differ. I've always had a libertarian bent myself. I think it ought to be up to the states. I think Colorado can decide one way. I think Texas can decide another. But I'll tell you...
Where in this country, most states have decided that marijuana will be legal at...
...dispute that is 9 years ago, as an elected member of the El Paso City Council, he introduced and advocated for energetically, debating ending the prohibition on all narcotics, on everything. He says he doesn't agree with Obamacare has hurt millions of Texans. It was sold to the people of this country on a promise from President Obama, if you like your health insurance plan, you can keep it. If you like your doctor, you can keep it. PolitiFact, the left-leaning organization, rated that 2013's lie of the year as millions of Americans had their health insurance canceled against their will. But the biggest reason people are unhappy with Obamacare is it's made their premiums skyrocket. I hear from Texans all over this state, I can't afford health insurance. President Obama promised the average family's premiums would drop $2,500 a year. In fact, they have risen over $5,000 a year. When Obamacare was implemented, the most inexpensive plan for a 30-year-old healthy man here in the Dallas area was $363 a year. Today, in this zip code where all of us are right now, a bronze plan for a 30-year-old healthy man is about $3,000 a year.
Representative?
I don't know how you're going to repeal every single word of the Affordable Care Act.
Realistically due to rein in President Trump on trade. Why should voters believe that you would be more successful getting him to change course than Senator Cruz, who
needs a senator who will work with the president where we can and stand up to him where we must?
It was interesting, Congressman O'Rourke brought up pecan farmers, because I've made the case directly to the administration that they should work on India to lower their tariffs on pecans so that we can export to India.
I'll stand up for everyone and work with anyone, including the president, to make sure that we do better for this country. Votes in the United States Senate, you tell me who can miss half the days at work and then be rehired for the same job going forward.
Congressman O'Rourke doesn't seem to understand that representing Texas is not doing a photo op in each county in Texas with reporters in tow.
And the next question goes to Representative O'Rourke. The Texas business community overwhelmingly supported the tax overhaul that you voted against last year. How can you effectively represent that important constituency when you have such a fundamental disagreement?
Generations from now, people looking back at this moment will not be able to believe that a country $21 trillion in debt, with the greatest levels of income disparity that we've seen since the last Gilded Age of more than 100 years ago, would find as its solution to the problem $2 trillion in tax breaks that disproportionately flow to corporations that are already sitting on record piles of cash and the already wealthy in this country. A tax bill written by the lobbyists for those very corporations. In fact, in one draft, in the margins, written by those lobbyists so that their corporate bosses could see the text before the senators could vote on it. And in the days before and just after Senator Cruz voted for this massive giveaway to the already wealthy, he received more than $120,000 from the political action committees that represent those who benefited from these tax breaks. I believe not in investing in corporations and in special interests. I believe in investing in people, in universal pre-K for every child so everyone has the same starting line in life, in health care for every Texan and every American so they're well enough to be their best, the ability to attend community college or SMU so that you can better yourself and do better for everyone else in your life, in your community, and in this country. I believe in investing in broadband internet in the 50% of rural Texas that today cannot reliably get online. I believe in investing in communities and in people, not in corporations, special interests, and political action committees.
You know, there is a consistency in Congressman O'Rourke's record. Over and over and over again, he supports higher taxes. When he was on the El Paso City Council, he voted 3 times to increase property taxes in El Paso. He voted in favor of a, quote, rain tax, which I don't even know what that is. I guess a tax on rain, but I'm not sure. He voted in favor of a pool tax. As a member of Congress, he has voted in favor of the death tax. He voted against the tax cut. And by the way, this tax cut has cut taxes on Americans all across Texas. It doubled the child tax credit. If you're a parent, it doubled it from $1,000 a child to $2,000 a child. That's real money. And by the way, that's refundable and in your pocket. And yet, his answer is he doesn't want to cut taxes. He wants to raise your taxes. So understand what Beto O'Rourke is promising you. If he's elected, he will fight to raise your taxes. That is not consistent with what the people of Texas want.
Representative.
Those 6 years that I was on the El Paso City Council, every single year we balanced the budget. We didn't.
That you believe in expanding government and higher taxes, and I commend you for fighting for what you believe in. As
Our audience and SMU for hosting tonight.
Some important dates to keep in mind. The last day to register to vote is October 9th. Early voting